Okay, guys. I hope I'm not giving y'all whiplash. Only because I have playlists. I gotta put everything in a playlist. See, this is the thing about ADHD that is weird to me. Like, we're disorganized, right? But we are organized. Like, we have to organize certain things. It's weird. Like, I've got bags for certain things. Like, I've got a knitting bag. I have crochet bags for different projects. I have a cross stitch bag. I've got all of my, like, my nail stuff. They all have their own little place to go. I have a nail room with a desk that has everything in its place. Like, my house is a mess, but like my project stuff is all neatly organized. My channel, yes, that too. my my channel's like that. I've got everything stuck in a playlist. Every trial has its own playlist. And that's why I don't have like one long stream with a bunch of different stuff in it. That would drive me crazy. So it's weird. ADHD, we're disorganized yet we're organized at the same time. So that's why we're jumping all over the place today, y'all. Because I'm organized. Okay, so back to Betty.
I assume you read the witness interview reports,
Yes, I did.
and that would have been included in that would have been
No, not at all.
the investigator's report of
all.
Brad Wright, generated from the conversation they had with him.
Yes.
Not
Do you
at all.
remember Brad talking about the?
I have an objection to this. Sustained.
Now let me show you this and see if you.
Show it to her and have her read it to herself and then ask her a question if you want.
For the record, Your Honor, I'm showing her a two-page document, investigator's report, William L. Green of Brad Wright, dated February 26, 1990. The witness, look at the last paragraph, the second page. Do you remember?
Wait a minute.
Oh, go ahead. No, I have an objection. Your side.
Well,
Did she consider it? Ask her that.
I'll wait till she gets done. I mean, I think she already testified she did consider this.
Ask her again.
Did
Mr.
you consider
Rose
that
objected.
report?
Yes, I did.
And that last paragraph states that Brad described Betty as being very active and having lots of friends. She did not sulk about her problems, did not seem depressed over the summer or in the months preceding November 5th, 1989. Did you
Yes.
consider that?
Yes, I did. But I also considered his statements in the first trial, where he indicated that she was, and I think it sounds to me there like he's alluding to that, where he said that she did not give in to her depression, she would mask it. I don't know if mask was his words, but that's how I interpreted what he was saying, was that she would put her depression aside and carry on and be brave.
That's the way he testified at the first trial?
That's my recollection of what I read of the transcript, yes.
And that would have been well over a year after he made this statement to the investigators.
Argumentative.
That says that she was masking her depression.
Just that she did not let her problems, sulk about her problems, which
That she
I
did
think
not
is
seem
what it
depressed.
and then he said she did not seem depressed.
And you think that shows that she's masking?
I don't think that's inconsistent with what I'm talking about with somebody who masks their depression.
Okay. Now, you did review the jail records that were generated by the defendant after she was jailed for these killings?
Yes.
And did you review Dr. Robinson's notes on November 6th in that record?
May I refresh my
Certainly.
memory?
Contradiction to November 6th, the day after the shootings.
And so it's Dr. Robinson's, not Louise Hines' notes, correct?
Well, I'll ask you about Ms. Hines in a second, but Dr. Robinson,
Yes, I've got them.
he examined the day after the shootings, and he stated that the patient presents seemingly emotionally fresh and physically rested.
Could you show me where you were reading?
That's a sort of hysterical shock. You don't know whether or not that was his ultimate diagnosis, do you? The label of difference that you testified to.
I think if I remember correctly, he did not make an ultimate diagnosis because the interview was interrupted.
Right, but he had the opportunity to observe her for a period of 2 months, 5 at the time, just because he was in the same case. Would you defer to his, if he came to fight, would you defer to his diagnosis on that, whatever it might be, since he actually saw her at that time?
And defer to his diagnosis regarding what?
Whether or not the defendant was suffering from hysterical shock.
Yes, I would defer to his and Louise Hines' diagnosis,
Okay.
the people who saw her right then.
In fact, turning to Ms. Hines, a week after the shootings on November 13th, Ms. Hines, does she not, talks about that Ms. Broderick appeared cheerful, pleasant, spoke willingly with me
This was what date?
on November 13th.
Yes.
And indeed, it was only about a month after that you see in those jail records that there's any indication of depression. Isn't that correct? A month after the homicides.
No, I don't think that that's correct.
You disagree with that?
Yes, I disagree
Okay.
with that.
Now, you considered the 1986 Milan test that was administered to the defendant when she was placed in a 72-hour hold after ramming her car into Dan's front doors.
Yes, I did consider it.
And turn your attention to page 3 of that Milan. The third paragraph where it states,
Wait a minute, you're ahead of me.
okay,
I have to say that I have a real question about reading that narrative as if it is a finding, because it is not a finding. And in fact, that's, in my estimation, a very unethical thing to do, to consider it a finding.
it's unethical for me to do.
Well, I think it needs the caveat that comes with it in order to read it, because it's not a finding. And I think that it can be very misleading, especially if that's not understood.
Well, aren't these computer printouts generated every time there's a Milan administered? Don't they come out as an explanation for what the graphs show?
No, I think that's, I mean, that there is a computer generated narrative that comes if you feed the data in from the Milan, but that narrative are simply hypotheses and things to look for in a person. They are not findings, and they should not be used as a report or as definitive.
Well, I understand that, but it's something that the professionals in the field would look at and consider when they would drop a psychological profile of the defendant, considering that she had taken this Milan test and it was computer scored and there was a descriptive analysis that came out from it. Wouldn't they consider that?
You certainly would consider it and read it.
That's all I'm asking you. Doesn't it state that this woman has been typified by social undependability and a tendency to exploitation, capriciousness, and irresponsible behavior, a glib social style, the persistent seeking of excitement, and frequent seductive and self-dramatizing behavior. Interpersonal relationships are characteristically shallow or tense, and she appears indifferent to the welfare of others. Praise and approval are actively solicited by immature and histrionic demands for attention. She is easily excited and quickly bored. Although willing to expend effort to achieve something for herself, she is difficult and resistant about carrying out what others ask of her. Intolerance of inactivity and an inability to delay gratification are associated with her impulsiveness, short-sighted hedonism, and her minimal regard for the consequences of her behavior, which may lead to difficulties with the legal authorities. Did you consider that?
Yes, I certainly did.
It's your testimony the defendant was not psychotic, at least at any time when you examined her from May until November of 1990, is that correct?
That's correct.
In fact, you saw nothing in any of the notes of any of the previous mental health professionals that examined the defendant that indicated that she was in any way psychotic. Isn't that also fair to say?
That's correct.
So she was oriented as a time and place and person.
Yes.
She wasn't hearing voices.
No voice.
Wasn't seeing things that weren't there.
That's correct.
Had no delusions of grandeur or persecution, people out to get her, that sort of thing.
There was no evidence that she was delusional.
And you personally diagnosed the defendant as being borderline
Yes, I did.
and being histrionic
Yes,
and having narcissistic features.
that's correct.
Now, it's correct that the DSM-3R does I don't want to get in trouble, describe or give symptoms for borderline personalities.
That's correct.
And it describes them as following, that it involves interpersonal relationships for the borderline are usually unstable and intense, and may be characterized by alternation of the extremes of over-idealization and devaluation. Would you agree with that?
Yes,
And that these people often have inappropriately intense anger with frequent displays of temper. Do you agree with that?
yes,
Recurrent suicidal threats, gestures. This behavior may serve to manipulate others.
yes,
Frequently accompanied by narcissistic and histrionic features.
yes.
And indeed, you did find those as well with the defendant, didn't you?
That's correct.
Is it correct to say that the borderlines are difficult people to get along with?
Not necessarily.
They can act socially appropriately
Yes, they can.
over long periods of time?
Well, it would, to understand and to be able to answer that, you have to understand that there are degrees also within the diagnosis of a borderline personality disorder, so that it is a continuum, so that you will see characteristics of borderline pathology where a person is not able to function very well at all. And indeed, it's not unusual to have episodes where somebody will need to be hospitalized, and then you will see someone functioning at a better level.
Nobody ever thought that Mrs. Broderick should be hospitalized at any time, did they?
Well, she was hospitalized.
Well, when she ran her car into the door, and then she was actually allowed after a day or so to leave, and she didn't want to leave. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, but they hospitalized her because they were concerned that she was suicidal.
Right.
That was one of the reasons.
And after she had been there for a day or so, they decided she was not suicidal. Is
That's
that correct?
correct.
And they wanted her to go home, didn't they?
No, they didn't necessarily want her to go home. She would not, the way I interpreted that was that they allowed her to stay. They were glad that she stayed. They didn't want to kick her out, but they did not feel that they had enough to hold her against her will.
Didn't they present her with a discharge form so that she could leave, and she refused to sign it?
Right.
So it was her choice.
It was her choice to stay at that point, yes.
And besides being suicidal, she was admitted because she was homicidal. Is that correct?
They were concerned about that, yes.
And it turned out at least that the suicidal part of it didn't really pose a real threat. Is that at least in their estimation at that time?
I don't know that that's true. I mean, they kept her in the hospital for a while and observed her, and I don't know that they felt that she was never suicidal. They certainly decided that after a period of time she was no longer either a suicide threat or a homicide threat.
You also diagnosed her as being histrionic?
Yes.
And there the DSM-3 talks about histrionics have a pervasive pattern of excessive emotionality and attention seeking.
Yes.
And their behavior is overly reactive and intensely expressed. Minor stimuli give rise to emotional excitability. Emotions are often expressed with inappropriate.
Her brooch is creepy. It looks like a doll's face. I don't like it.
Appropriate exaggeration. The person may appear much more sad, angry, or delighted than would seem to be warranted. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
They tend to be very self-centered, with little or no tolerance for personal occasions, are directed to obtaining immediate satisfaction. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that tendency is, yes.
They are lively and dramatic and are always drawing attention to themselves.
Yes.
And they are prone to exaggeration in their personal relations and interpersonal relations, and often act out their role such.
That's it. Karens. That's what's wrong with Karens. They all have histrionic personality disorder. There we go. I fixed it. That's what's wrong with Karens. They all need therapy because they have histrionic personality disorder.
Are these also people that may be somewhat difficult people to get along with?
Didn't you miss
It
one?
looks like a face.
Well, maybe I did. Tell me what it is if I did.
I'm talking about the speech and it being very global and impressionistic.
Yeah, I don't think I got everything here, but if
Okay.
that's part of it too, global and impressionistic?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think that it's also important to note that not everyone who has a diagnosis of a histrionic personality disorder will have every one of those characteristics,
Okay.
and that the level varies from person to person.
It's fair to say, though, that one of the hallmarks of being histrionic is that you tend to exaggerate. Is that correct?
That's true.
And you manipulate.
There can be manipulation. That's not necessarily true.
It's a frequent feature, though, isn't it?
The manipulation is not in the sense of sociopathic type of manipulation, though. It's in a sense of feeling very powerless and unable to solve problems, so that you help you to.
Manipulate other people through exaggeration. Is that correct?
Well, I think that most mental health people would qualify that to show that it's similar, that it's very dissimilar to the type of manipulation that I think you would think of as somebody who uses other people in a sociopathic type of way, like a con artist who manipulates. And it's not that type of manipulation at all. It's needing other people to help a histrionic person to solve problems, and so
Right.
therefore you tend to be very acquiescing and people-pleasing so that people will help you. That type of manipulation.
Right, and that's because the histrionic is very cares more about himself than do about other people. Is that correct?
No, that's also a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation. They are self-centered, and the reason why they're self-centered is because Their sense of identity is based on relationships and how they are relating to her, and empty. So that's the danger of trying to diagnose somebody just from the DSM-3 that I spoke of earlier.
Now, you say that people like antisocials have a different sort of manipulation. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
But the defendant was diagnosed as antisocial at Claremont Hospital, wasn't she?
She had, that was one of the diagnoses that were suggested, was a borderline personality disorder.
And also an antisocial personality disorder, isn't that correct?
I'm not sure, and I don't think that was the diagnosis of Dr. Gary Levinson.
Well, I'll keep going, but maybe we can find that and show it to you. Now, you also diagnosed her as being narcissistic.
No, having narcissistic features.
Right, features. Other people have diagnosed her as being narcissistic, haven't they?
Dr. Goldspan diagnosed her as narcissistic personality disorder.
And Dr. Goldsman never diagnosed her as having major depression, did he?
He indicated that she had depression. I think he said, of course, she's been depressed and had depression, and indicated that it was rage turned inward.
But he didn't see the depression that you saw. He didn't diagnose her as a DSM-3 diagnosis of major depression, did he?
He didn't give her a DSM-3 diagnosis. He never, in his testimony, talked about Axis 1 or Axis 2 diagnoses. He just described her. From my reading of his transcript, he described her as narcissistic, but he'd never dealt with an Axis 1 diagnosis at all, except that when asked, he agreed that she was depressed.
Right, but he did not say she has a major depression disorder such as you did.
That's correct.
Okay. And as the narcissism here, isn't it true that the DSM-3R says that narcissists have a pattern of grandiosity, hypersensitivity to the evaluation of others, and a lack of empathy?
Yes.
And they tend to exaggerate their accomplishments and talents, and they're special, even without perfect achievement. They often feel that because of their specialness, their problems are unique.
Yes.
And in their interpersonal relationships, they're invariably disturbed. The relationships are disturbed. There's a lack of empathy and an inability to recognize and experience how others feel. That's common with them.
Yes.
In fact, in your prior testimony in the last trial, didn't you say that the defendant's lack of empathy for others, including her children, was a characteristic of her narcissistic personality trait that you described?
I don't remember saying that.
I think counsel may have a different paginated transcript, so I'll show it to him.
So could you repeat your question for me, please?
So isn't it true that the last time you testified, you said that, well, I think that in understanding Mrs. Broderick, you also have to come to grips with the lack of empathy that she showed, and at least in her behavior after the separation. For example, the lack of empathy for her children and failure of empathy is something that is considered a symptom of narcissism. You also see a fair degree of self-focus, which is also a symptom of narcissism. Would you still hold with that diagnosis of the defendant?
That description of
Yes.
having problems with empathy? Yes. At that point in her functioning, very much so.
Another thing under the DSM-3R is that narcissists have a sense of entitlement and unreasonable expectation of especially favorable treatment. That's usually present, isn't that correct?
Yes. It's often present.
In other words, that means that the people who have narcissistic tendencies are self-centered and they put their needs before the needs of others. Would that be fair to say?
No, I think that that's misleading. I think that a person who has narcissistic tendencies will have tendencies to do one or more of those things as described. A person who has a diagnosis of a narcissistic personality disorder, of course, will have more of a tendency to do that. But the way you've described it as a person with narcissistic tendencies will not necessarily have each one of those features.
But you at least found that in the defendant's behavior, didn't you?
Which?
That she was self-centered and put her needs ahead of those of other people.
I think that sometimes that she did, and sometimes she did the exact opposite of that. So that certainly isn't something that was abiding and that would describe an enduring trait of Elizabeth Broderick.
Also, the DSM-3 talks about interpersonal exploitativeness as a characteristic of them, in which others are taken advantage of in order to achieve one's ends or for self-aggrandizement. Friendships are all often made only after the person considers how he or she can profit from them. In romantic relationships, the partner is often treated as an object to be used to bolster the person's self-esteem. Is that also a fair assessment of a narcissist?
I think that that is often what you see in a narcissist. Yes.
Now, when you say that one of the symptoms of depression might be suicide attempts, you don't have to be depressed to commit suicide, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
In fact, a lot of people make attempts at suicide that are not bona fide, isn't that correct? Called suicidal gestures.
I think I described that this morning when I was testifying, that generally when you have somebody who has made a suicide gesture, you can't assume that they are not suicidal. As a matter of fact, you had better assume that they are suicidal.
But I guess the question I was asking was, don't a lot of people affect an attempt at suicide who aren't genuine in their attempt, that they want to get some attention?
Again, that would not be a suicide gesture, if that's what you're talking about. A suicide gesture means that you're doing something because part of you, it's thinking that you want to die.
It's never used as a manipulative technique?
Well, part of the unconscious and maybe even conscious rationale for some suicide gestures would be as a cry for help. And sometimes a cry for help is what you're asking for is somebody to listen to you and to understand the problems and to pay attention to it. And if that's considered manipulation, then yes, it would be a manipulation.
Well, didn't we just talk about a quote for borderlines, and you diagnosed the defendant as being borderline, where the quote was under the DSM-3, recurrent suicidal threats gestures, this behavior may serve to manipulate others.
Correct. But in the way that I just described, manipulate others.
Okay. Now, isn't it true that when the defendant was put in Las Colinas and seen by Dr. Robinson, that she denied ever being suicidal?
Yeah, I think she did.
And that in 1986, when she was admitted to Claremont, Dr. Levinson said that suicide potential for the defendant was unlikely, but she could kill herself as a manipulative acting out gesture?
Yes.
Now, you've talked about anger and suicidal threats and a strong reaction to loss. These are all attributes of depression, according to your testimony.
I'm sorry, I missed part of that.
Anger, suicidal threats, strong reactions to loss. These are depression characteristics.
Yes.
Aren't they also borderline characteristics as well?
Yes.
Who was it that you said you first got involved as a therapist rather than an evaluator of the defendant?
That's correct.
Who was it that got you involved?
Mr. Early?
The defense attorney did?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Now, I just want to make sure we're clear on this. You're saying that people, in this case, the defendant was a borderline, she was histrionic, and she had narcissistic tendencies, but she only came by these later in life? Is that your testimony?
My testimony is that from what I have been able to glean from the people who knew her prior to 1983 and who describe her, you do not see evidence of somebody who was not functioning. You see a very functional person. In reading the marriage encounter, you see a very functioning person, her statements. And so it appears that these characteristics were not there prior to 1983.
So you're talking about, based on what the defendant wrote in that booklet of the marriage encounter, and whatever witnesses were interviewed about the defendant's life before 1983, you don't think she was a personality disorder before that time, was not histrionic or borderline or narcissistic?
What I said was that the manifestations of these personality disorders were not apparent before 1983 through the eyes of the people who knew her, who described her as tremendously well functional. And so that you have to come to grips with that in one way or another.
But then again, you're isolating your opinion to the data that you have. However many people the defense talked to or wherever the information came from, you're limited in looking at that. You don't really know what happened with the defendant before 1983, do you?
That's correct, but it's a wide range of people, including school teachers that dealt with her regarding her children, friends who described her as very well functioning. At least one trained observer, Dr. Jacobson, who had some interaction with her in 1980 when she went with her daughter Lee to see Dr. Jacobson, also describes her as a very well functioning person.
Did you talk to I'm sorry, did you talk to the daughters and talk to them about what went on in the marriage before 1983?
No, but I...
Okay, oh, that's okay, that's all right.
But I certainly read their statements.
Okay, and you saw nothing there to show any lack of function on her part before the marriage, or before 1983?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you don't see the problems that would lead to a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder. You certainly see, and I am aware that there were problems and unhappiness much before 1983, and Mrs. Broderick talks about the fact that there was unhappiness in her life and in her marriage before 1983. She talked to me about that.
And she's talked to a lot of other people and said that her marriage was beautiful and wonderful before 1983. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And that would be an inconsistency, wouldn't it?
That is inconsistent, yeah, but again, I'm sorry.
I think you answered the question. You did talk to the defendant about the killings themselves, right?
Yes, as I described earlier.
And the defendant did tell you some of what she did when she went into that room, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
She stated that when I opened the door to this room, to the bedroom, basically, I never saw them. Just opened the door, and I wasn't even in the room. Linda moved, and I shot. Is that what the defendant told you?
As best that I can remember it, yes. Again, recalling, as I testified earlier, that I was not writing it, not able to write it word for word.
And you didn't ask her to stop and write it down more clearly?
That's correct, I did not.
You remember saying, I remember pulling the trigger once?
Do I remember her saying that?
Well, she did say that to you, that according to your notes, didn't she?
I don't know. That's not in a quote, but that's what I wrote down is what I felt I heard.
You did write down the words, I remember pulling the trigger once, didn't you?
That's correct.
And you didn't write down the words, "I never saw them, just opened the door, I wasn't even in the room, Linda moved, and I shot." Those are your words exactly, aren't they?
Those are my words, yes.
Okay. And you also wrote down that went in the room to go out the other door, Dan's on the floor, puts his hands up, "Okay, okay, you got me." You wrote that?
Yes, I wrote that.
"Hit him on the hand because I didn't get him." You wrote that?
Yes.
"Pulled out the phone. I left the phone at the top of the stairs." Did you write that?
Yes.
And those are your best recollection, that's your best recollection of what the defendant said. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you skipped a line, but a sentence, but
"Pulled out the phone, he was just there and the phone was coming at me and I pulled."
right.
Did I skip anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Coming at her.
In terms of that paragraph.
Is she saying he threw the phone at her?
And that's what the defendant told you.
As I said before, I was writing very quickly, she was talking very quickly. I was sentences behind her. This is my best effort.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Redirect?
Yeah.
You've worked in jail before, isn't that correct?
That's correct. Well, what do you mean by working at the jail?
Well, I mean, you've been to the jail and visited people that are there, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when somebody admits to suicide in jail, they're put naked in a cell, aren't they?
Yes.
Okay. And there's a reason why inmates at times may not want to tell somebody what they're feeling if they end up being naked in a cell. Objection, speculation.
Overruled, you can answer that.
I've dealt with many people who have ended up in a rubber room naked because they have said something about suicide, and typically it is something that's avoided. In my experience, it's something that's avoided at all costs because it's such a horrible thing to have happen to you. It's cold, you feel terribly exposed, you're alone, and it is a instant rapport breaker when you tell the jail that you think somebody is suicidal, because they always go into the rubber room.
And when Ms. Broderick was, from jail notes, admitted to the jail, she was put in this rubber room, wasn't she?
Yes, she was.
Okay. And when Dr. Robinson talked about her being fresh and well rested, that's coming out from very next day from the rubber room, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. I take it that when you have somebody who has a hysterical reaction, you're going to see inappropriate affect.
Yes, you typically see inappropriate affect.
The questions were asked you about the Milan reading score, and there was some quotes that were given, asked you about a district attorney. Is there a caveat that, in fact, they even give with the score?
With the narrative, yes, they give a caveat
And what does the caveat tell you?
that you should not consider this as a report, and that it is hypotheses, and that it needs to be interpreted by a trained clinician.
So, and it even indicates that you shouldn't even read it to the patient, doesn't it? Or the patient's family, because it can be so misleading.
Yes.
At the time when they score, you get a computer score. Anyone who scores high enough on a scale to be considered borderline, they would get the same printout. Is that correct?
That's correct. In other words, this is not tailored to the person specifically, but it's both an empirical test and a theoretically based test. So if you get a certain score, say on narcissism, then it goes into the computer bank. It's only 175 questions on the test, so it goes into the computer bank, and it gives out different statements regarding narcissism. And no one person will fit every single one of those statements, and none of those statements will fit everybody who scores high on that scale. And that's why it has to be dealt with very carefully, because it can be very misleading.
Okay. And when you talked about manipulative, you talked about there's sociopathic manipulation, such as a con man that wants somebody to believe something that's not true. There's that kind of manipulation, isn't there?
That's true.
Yeah. And then there's a manipulation that that we have when we want people to feel a certain way.
Well,
Objection, lady. Overruled.
when you are trying to get attention and have somebody talk to you about problems you are having or how you are feeling, that's kind of like called a manipulation. It's a cry for help. You're trying to get that person's attention and to get them to really listen.
Now, manipulation is, when you have that term, that's part of, manipulation can be part of a healthy personality too, can it not?
You mean, do healthy people ever use manipulation?
Yeah.
Yes, of course they do.
So for instance, when you send somebody flowers, you may be trying to manipulate their feelings.
Objection, irrelevant. Overruled. Can answer that.
Yes,
or no?
that's true. That any one of these characteristics, you know, we all use these characteristics and all have some of these traits, so that there can be within the normal realm also.
That's about how somebody what you viewed to determine, or what you looked at to determine whether these traits were present before 1983.
Correct.
Okay. And you gave some example of those.
Okay.
Okay. When you looked at the marriage encounters where the people were speaking in private to each other and their feelings and their problems in the marriage, did they do that in the marriage encounters?
Yes.
Okay. Was there anything in Mr. Broderick's marriage encounter that was talking about the person being, that you would see all these tendencies about someone being just self-centered, not giving, all the things that were read?
Objection, the document speaks for itself. Vague as to who personality you're talking about, Mr. Are you talking about Mr. Broderick's or Mrs. Broderick's?
Well, first of all, Mr. Broderick's.
Irrelevant. Sustained.
And how about Mrs. Broderick's encounter? Was that somebody who was self-centered, not caring about other people's feelings?
Beyond the scope, number one, and that has nothing to do with, she didn't write those words, he did. Well, she's talking about Mrs. Broderick's now, as I understand the question.
Yes.
Overruled.
Well, no, I mean, her concerns, as she wrote them in the marriage encounter, was for a loving, close family, better communication, mirroring to other people, love and a good marriage, and that they would grow closer, and that they would put wants aside and only talk about the things that they really needed.
And when she talked about the one thing that she wanted materialistically, what was that?
She wanted a sofa so that they could sit together at the end of the day and really be close.
Mr.
Early, the doctor has a scheduling problem. This is a good time to...
Yes, because it's going to be about 15 minutes, but I'll be able to finish up fairly quickly tomorrow morning.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, witnesses, like all the rest of us, have scheduling concerns, and when they don't know when they're going to testify and how long they're going to be here. So obviously we want to accommodate them. So for that reason, we're going a little bit early today, because she has another matter, the doctor has another matter at 4 o'clock, just so you know what's going on. We'll be in recess then now until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Please remember the admonition. See you tomorrow at 9. Rick is present. Dr. D. Francesca is present on the witness stand. You're still under oath from yesterday, ma'am. And ladies and gentlemen, before we start, we had a matter come up unexpectedly this morning that I had to take care of before we resumed proceedings. So I apologize to you for the delay. And had I known we were going to be starting late, I would have excused you to a later point in time, but I didn't know about it till I got here this morning, so hope you understand. Go ahead, Mr. Early.
Doctor, there was some questions about the T-score, the 65 T-score, and correlating that to being the 65 percentile. Were you able to go to the literature to find out how a T-score relates to where a person would be in a percentile?
Objection, which test are we talking about?
Well, vague, just rephrase it, Mr. Early.
Okay. There was a test that was referred to in the T-score of 65. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And whose test was that?
That was a test called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, and the question was whether a T-score of 65 is the same thing as a percentile of 65, and we were talking about her score on the depression scale.
Okay. And do they in fact relate T-scores to percentile if you want that information?
Yes.
And what percentile, if we try to relate a T-score 65 to percentile, what percentile are we talking about?
That's the 95th percentile on the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory 2.
Okay. So that means that when we're talking about a scale of 0 to 100, she would fit at 95.
As far as a percentile, that's the 95th percentile.
Okay. You mentioned Dr. Nelson, and you some questions about reinterpreting, or you answered reinterpret his test scores. Do you remember those?
Yes.
And why was that done, or what did you mean by that?
Well, Dr. Nelson is a psychiatrist who saw Betty Broderick, and he had a psychologist administer Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, the same MMPI test. And then when Dr. Nelson, the psychiatrist, was then interpreting the results of the MMPI, he was the one that interpreted it as a 65th percentile, and it should have been 65th, T-score of 65, percentile of 95.
Okay. There was some questions asked you about the Milan test. Is there a warning that comes with the Milan test?
A caveat and
Your Honor.
a warning.
Well, sustained.
Well, could you read that caveat?
Ask and answer, Your Honor.
I've had her,
Well,
she's read the caveat?
How much she's read it?
Before, she read it in my cross-examination.
I don't recall that. If she's read it, you can go ahead and read it again.
All right.
Just so we're clear, we're talking about a caveat on the MMPI or the
Milan.
Milan.
She read that at length before the jury.
No, I didn't.
I don't recall her reading it, so go ahead.
Your Honor, in other words, she explained it. She testified.
Well, that's different than reading it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Based on theoretical inferences and probabilistic data from actuarial research, the MCMI-2 report cannot be judged definitive. It must be viewed as only one facet of a comprehensive psychological assessment and should be evaluated in additional clinical data. For example, current life circumstances, observed behavior, biographic history, interview responses, and information from other tests. To avoid its misconstrual or misuse, the report should be evaluated by mental health clinicians trained in recognizing the strengths and limitations of psychological test data. Given its limited database and pathologic focus, the report should not be shown to patients or their relatives.
And I take it that there was some indications in the report that after the doctors looked at the person's Mrs. Broderick's current life situation, other factors either changed or upgraded her condition.
Objection, that does not adequately state the records.
Well, overruled. You can answer that.
I think what happened was that the psychiatrist...
Objection as to the doctor's speculation as to what did or did not happen.
Non-responsive sustained.
Now, there were some questions about Mrs. Broderick's function
how she was functioning. Do you remember those questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Objection, they were not questions, they were facts.
Well,
Your Honor, that's for the jury.
Overruled. Go ahead, Mr. Early.
Is depression all pervasive?
Objection
What was
paid.
that?
Overruled. You can answer that.
No, depression does not necessarily manifest itself to other people
Why are you trying to
all
rip
the
it out of my
time,
hand?
and a person is at times able to get themselves together, go out and do things, even though they are in a depressed state.
Okay. Are there people that you see that are highly functional who
Stop.
can be classified as having major depression, manic depressive?
Certainly, many people who are highly successful
You're making a
have
mess.
diagnoses of manic depressive disorder, successful people in all walks of life. An example from history is Winston Churchill was diagnosed as having manic depressive disorder.
And are there times that you see that people do things to at least alleviate depression or deal with it so that they can present themselves to other people?
Yes.
Okay. Was there anything that you saw in this case as to something that Elizabeth Broderick would do to help deal with the depression at any time of the day?
Objection, ask and answer as goes to this masking counsel.
Overruled. You can answer that.
She did a lot of things to try to snap out of the depression, put herself together. She joined organizations. She would go out shopping, spending money. That's something that frequently people do to try to make themselves feel better. Oftentimes, a friend will say, take a trip, pull yourself together. She did that. She tried taking trips. For example, she went to Tahiti, but what happened was she said she was, sitting on the beach and feeling worse than she
On
did
your
at
face.
home. And so, as often happens, these are just very superficial remedies. They don't solve the problem. They might work for a little while, but then the person plummets back into a depression, which Mrs. Broderick explained to me would happen with her as well.
Was she doing something on a daily habit in the morning or in the evening to?
Mrs. Broderick talked about the way that she dealt with her depression, or at least what helped her get going, was her walks on the beach. She would, in the morning, get up, walk on the beach, get some fresh air. She would feel better, and that would help her be able to face her day better.
There was some questions about, did Mrs. Broderick have talents and interests that you were asked about? Does the fact that she has talents and interests make it so that she would not have any of the disorders you talked about or depression?
No.
Okay, and why is that?
Well, I think it's very clear that Mrs. Broderick has the raw material to, number one, have a self-identity and have purpose and have direction. She's multi-talented, she's very bright. But she doesn't have self-confidence. She will say, I'm the greatest mother, I'm the greatest this, and I'm the greatest that. But typically, people who say that don't really believe it, and Mrs. Broderick doesn't believe it.
Got food on
She
your face.
is not a passive woman, but she's a very emotionally dependent woman. She spent most of her marriage acquiescing to Dan's Broderick's judgment.
Excuse me, Doc, how's that? She's gone beyond answering the question.
Okay. Does a long-term marriage where you're acquiescing to the other person and quieting the voice, does that make it difficult for people to find their own identity?
Objection, ask and answer.
Overruled.
Yes.
And why is that?
Because you have the habit of deferring to someone else. You don't develop a sense of confidence in your own opinions and your own judgment. You develop the habit of having to have everything blessed or acknowledged by the other person, so that you might think this is good and this is important, but unless the other person says you're right, this is good and this is important, you don't really believe it. You spend time trying to convince that other person that what you're doing has merit. And when they do agree with you, then you can feel good about yourself.
There was some questions asked about some statements that Elizabeth Broderick would make as to, at one time, the marriage being good, at another time saying the marriage was bad. What would be the reasons for that?
Well,
Pure speculation.
You see something similar to that in people just in general. For example, when you have a friendship, and if you talk about that friend, you talk about the good things about the friend. You don't even think about the bad things about the friend. But if that friendship breaks up, then you start thinking about the bad qualities that other person has, and you start talking about them. Under a stressful condition, like a breakup of a partnership or a lawsuit or any type of stressful condition, the whole dynamic becomes exaggerated. So you might not only say bad things about the person and talk about their bad traits, but you might focus on them tremendously. So that what you see that she's doing is not so unusual, but it is exaggerated. It's much more than you see in daily life because of the stress of the situation.
Let me get the
I have
food
no
off
further
your
questions.
face.
Mr. Urkoff?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Doctor, when you were talking about the defendant going into the observation cell with Mr. Early, remember talking about that?
The observation cell, you mean that where they go for a suicide watch?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Isn't it true that she went in that observation cell sometime late in the evening of the 5th and came out in the morning of the 6th?
Yes, it's true.
And when she came out, she was spoken to by Louise Heinz?
That's correct.
And when Ms. Heinz asked the defendant if she still felt that she might be suicidal, the defendant said the situation is resolved. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, this 86 Milan test that you talked about, how we have to be careful in interpreting it, isn't it true that the Milan test in 1986 was interpreted by a trained clinician?
Yes, it was interpreted by Dr. Louis Nydorf and then and Dr. Gary Levinson.
Right. And they found the test to be valid, didn't they?
What do you mean by valid?
Well, they didn't see anything in terms of malingering or anything that would cause them not to believe the test. Is that correct?
Well, there's no place in any of the notes, in any of the documents that I read that anybody referred to whether the Milan test reflected what they saw. And in fact...
So in other words, Doctor, your answer is they didn't find it valid?
No, I didn't say that at all.
Well, did...
And in fact, if you let me finish...
No, I'm sorry, but I
Okay.
just like you to listen to my question, then you can... If you can't answer yes or no, then just tell me if you
All
don't
right.
feel comfortable. The hospital staff at Claremont did rely on this Milan test, didn't they?
It doesn't state if they relied on it or not. You can draw your own conclusions, but it doesn't state that.
Didn't Dr. Levinson, the psychiatrist that examined the defendant, rely on the Milan test?
I don't know if he did. I'm assuming
You wanna
that he
take a
read
look?
it and relied on it.
So he did rely on the Milan test, is that correct?
I think he considered it. I'm assuming that he considered it.
And if he thought it was invalid, he wouldn't have relied on it, would he?
Well, that's difficult for me to answer with a
If you
yes or
can't
no.
answer that, then don't answer.
Okay.
Let me show you part of Dr. Levinson's report here at Claremont Hospital. Why don't you read that paragraph there and see whether or not he relied on the Milan test.
Is this Dr. Levinson's
Yeah, the next
report?
page has a signature.
Okay. Yes, he did rely on it.
Okay. So he didn't see anything wrong with Milan test, did he?
Well, I don't think you can make that statement.
Okay,
I disagree with that.
okay. And after reviewing the Milan test, didn't Dr. Levinson diagnose the defendant as borderline?
On axis 2, yes.
And didn't he also see a pervasive personality disorder with histrionic, antisocial, and borderline features?
No, I think he's quoting from the Milan when he's talking there. He diagnosed her as a borderline personality disorder.
Doesn't he say the other primary diagnosis noted was a pervasive personality disorder?
That's a direct quote from the test, I believe.
It is?
Yes.
And he didn't disagree with that, I take it?
Well, his diagnosis was on axis 1, a bipolar manic depressive disorder, on
That's how-
axis 2, a borderline personality disorder.
Right, and he didn't disagree with Milan's finding that she was bipolar, that she was, or strike that she was borderline, that she was histrionic, she was antisocial. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. That's a misreading of the diagnosis.
Doesn't he say the other primary diagnosis was a pervasive personality disorder, which is seen as a mixed personality disorder with histrionic, antisocial, and borderline features? Doesn't he say that?
Those aren't his words. He's quoting from the test. Obviously, he disagreed with that diagnosis because he didn't give her that diagnosis. He gave her this diagnosis, which is different from that one. So I'm inferring from that he disagreed with that. He gave her a diagnosis, axis 2, borderline personality disorder, period. He gave her a diagnosis, axis 1, bipolar affective disorder. I'm sorry, bipolar affective disorder, mixed type, hypomanic phase. So his diagnosis is different from what he is quoting from the Milan.
But he still diagnoses her as a borderline, doesn't he?
That's correct.
Bye, Brad.
And you're saying that the Milan did show her to be, have the antisocial, histrionic, and borderline features?
I didn't say that the Milan showed her to be that. I said, I think very clearly, that what you get from the Milan are hypotheses, and some of the hypotheses
Apparently not
included
clearly.
somatization disorder, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, antisocial characteristics. Dr. Levinson looked at that, and he selected bipolar disorder and borderline disorder.
So you're saying that the Milan does not show anything determinative, it just shows hypotheses?
That's correct, and that's what I read in the caveat.
And that would include Dr. Friedman's testing that you relied on as well. Those would be hypotheses.
That's correct.
And that would also be the MMPI. Those would be hypotheses.
That's correct.
So when you say the defendant has the depression as shown in the testing that was administered by Dr. Friedman and relied upon by yourself, that would be hypotheses as to the testing and what it showed.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, defense counsel talked about manipulation in, I guess, the perspective of the way histrionics and borderlines manipulate. And he talked about sending flowers and how that might be a manipulation. Remember that testimony?
Yes.
His questions. Are we saying that that's the way borderlines and histrionics manipulate? They send people flowers?
I think that is a description of a normal type of manipulation, not a pathological type of manipulation.
And when a borderline or a histrionic manipulates, it's a much more different type of manipulation, isn't that correct?
Well, when you're talking about manipulation and saying, and this is a symptom of a disorder, you're talking about it in a way that's exaggerated. It's more than normal. So it might involve sending flowers, but it would be, you would be inferring from that there's some pathological process going on.
Pathological meaning that either hurts the person or it could hurt other people, isn't that correct?
Well, that it's exaggerated from normal, not necessarily that it hurts the person or it hurts others, although it may.
Well, pathological means bad, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't mean bad, it means sick.
sick. And it also means that it could hurt other people, isn't that correct?
Well, I think you're taking that out of context.
Okay. Are you saying that borderlines and histrionics don't hurt other people with their manipulation?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay. And borderlines don't need to feel powerless, do they, before they get angry?
Say that again?
Well, there was some questioning by the defense attorney about powerlessness, and that I think you agreed to some extent, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that borderlines, when they feel powerless, they get mad. Is that what you testified to, or am I misstating that?
Well, I think that that's an oversimplification.
Okay. So borderlines don't have to feel powerless to get angry, do they?
No, not at all.
In fact, that's one of the hallmarks of the borderline personality, that a very...
I'm going to object if you know the scope of redirect.
It's not
Overall.
Isn't one of the hallmarks of borderlines that a very small slight, or maybe something that wouldn't even be taken as a slight or an insult by other people, borderlines react with rage, hostility, and inappropriate anger.
That is something that you will see in a borderline personality disorder, that they're very reactive, and the slight or the provocation will not be obviously or objectively that great.
But,
So it's,
but the answer to, but I guess my question was, don't borderlines interacting with somebody else, and the other person says something that's innocuous, don't borderlines often just fly off the handle as a result of that?
I would disagree with the word often. It would certainly depend upon the situation and the amount of stress in the person's life and what else is going on. So that if you're working with someone who has a borderline personality disorder.
Is your answer no then?
No, I just disagreed with
You
your
disagree with
use
what I
of the word often.
Okay. Isn't that one of the diagnostic criteria, though, for borderline
Absolutely,
personality?
absolutely. It was just the way you phrased that I thought was misleading.
Well, they do it enough so that that's one of the, they fly off the handle enough so that's one of the diagnostic criteria.
That's correct.
Okay. I take it you did read Dr. Nelson's notes?
Yes, I did read Dr. Nelson.
He was the defendant's psychiatrist for a period of years.
I read Dr. Nelson's notes.
He was the defendant's psychiatrist for a period of years.
I don't know if, I'd have to refer to my notes to see how long he saw her and what years, but he certainly knew her over a span of years.
Knew her fairly well.
I don't know about that, but he knew her.
Didn't Dr. Nelson see the defendant 20 times between February of 1987 and July of 1989? Would you quarrel with those dates?
No, I think that's what I remember.
Didn't he say that, and did you consider this, that the defendant says that she's so mad at Dan, well, his assessment of the defendant was that she was so mad at Dan that it interferes with the resolution of the issues?
Yes.
And he also says that the defendant projects and blames, sees things in black and white, hates her husband's guts.
Yes. Could I see where you're reading so that I can read
Sure.
along with you? Yeah, I don't think I have these notes, but I can read along with this.
Okay.
Mhm.
Did they identify which notes of those, are those Dr. Nelson's notes, copies of?
Dr. Nelson's notes, this is sometime. I'll show the defense counsel.
Show it to him first.
Well, I'm just asking where they're from, that's all. Just
Dr. Nelson.
Okay.
So she did say that she hated The defendant's got, or Dan's got, is that correct?
That's
According to Dr. Nelson?
according to Dr. Nelson, yes.
I have no further questions.
Redirect?
And depending on what was going on in either the court hearings or visitation, may reflect her feelings. This would be the splitting we talked about Dan at the time.
Objection, it calls for speculation, it's also beyond scope of a recross.
Well, sustained on the last round.
Beyond the scope of recross?
Yeah. Redirect, he spoke himself. It's beyond scope of redirect.
I just, the last question that was asked was about this note here.
Yes.
Okay, I'm asking, you understand that, Doctor?
Yes.
Okay. Is
Regarding
that, would that be an example? Do you know what was going on in Elizabeth Broderick's life or child custody or anything else surrounding that event when she made that statement?
Well, and yes, in terms of the what had been going on all along, yes.
Okay. But you don't know what specific day that was done?
That's correct. I
obviously.
don't know that.
Okay. And you don't know what might have happened, what phone calls she might have gotten, how she feels?
That's correct.
Okay. And Elizabeth Broderick will talk with, when she makes a statement, it'll be...
Objection, please, Your Honor.
Overruled. Go ahead.
Is that a statement that that would be unusual given what your diagnosis and how she looks at her world around her?
No, that's not abnormal.
Okay.
I have no further questions.
Recross.
None, Your Honor.
Witness be excused.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
There's a judge. There's two judges. I don't know who Lucy Cameron is. Judge Anthony Joseph. Officer Winnie. Testifying for Betty. Judges are testifying for. Oh, stupid. Error, timeout, garbage. Come on. If this works out right, this might take us up to Denton. Right now, it's right. Nah. Y'all, I need a computer. I don't even know if that's a problem, but still, I need a new computer. Because I got new internet. I got an Ethernet cable. You okay? What was that cough about? Why are you coughing, son? Nope, that's not the one we're on. That tickle, Spike. What are you doing? Why are you sniffing my foot? That tickles.
EDUN.
Morning, ma'am. Do you know the lady at Betty Broderick?
Yes, I do.
You were just playing. Don't wait me. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Stop it. Why are you telling me to wait? You were just playing. All I did was pause you.
Lucy Peredun, P-E-R-E-D-U-N.
Morning, ma'am.
Do you know the lady at end of the council table? How did you happen to meet Mrs. Broderick?
I had placed a number of ads in local San Diego newspapers. This was in July of 1988, and she responded to the ad.
Okay. And, no, that's okay. And did you make some?
Yes, I was looking for an exchange, a situation I needed a place for myself and my daughter. I was willing to exchange light housekeeping for a place for us, but there were no requirements. Betty did not have any.
Good Lord. Knock it off. I hate this website. How we're doing is not going to.
There were no requirements. Betty did not have any requirements for me to do. It was more of a, she just allowed us to come and live there with her.
Did you know the reason why she allowed that?
Oliver was going to ask that, yes or no?
Yes,
And what was that?
she loved children. She told me she loved children. She recognized that I had a need, and more than anything, I believe she wanted companionship. She didn't want to be alone in her home.
Okay. And do you remember when you met her?
Yes.
And when was that?
It was the first week of August in 1988.
Okay. And what was your relationship with Mrs. Broderick after you met her?
It remained a friendship, a companionship.
Okay. Did anyone else live there with you?
My daughter, occasionally the boys would come. Occasionally her daughters, well, Kim had gone off in September to university, and Lee, after a point, came to live there in the home also.
Okay. Did Now, did she do anything to help with the care of your daughter?
Sustained.
The, did you, did she have any regular habits in the morning that you would see?
Well, I could tell that Betty had always been up before I was up. I like to stay up late. I do reading then, and I would recognize that when I woke up in the morning, that kitchen, for example, was not in the same state as it was when I left it. My bedroom was beside the garage, so I would often hear the truck leave in the morning while I was still in bed. And Betty drove my daughter to school.
Sustained.
Can I continue?
No, we'll let me ask you another question.
Did you observe any legal papers in her house?
Oh, yes, there were volumes of papers.
Okay, and could you give us a general idea of how that was like?
Betty's dining room table, for example, it was a very long table that would probably seat me, I would say, a dozen people. It looked like one of these tables here without the tall binders. There were piles of papers there. Her kitchen counter was as large as one of these tables here, also had piles of papers, envelopes. She had a room that was off the kitchen. It was sort of a little den room, and this had boxes, at least a dozen boxes on the floor, full of papers.
Would you be around when she was preparing for court hearings?
Yes.
Okay. And how would she respond generally about going to court?
It was not a happy response. It was, the times were not, they were not happy emotionally. In that sense, there was a lot of anxiety. She was very depressed. She told me she did not know, like, what to expect. You know, what would he pull this time, sort of a thing. So this was early on. I would say August, September. By the time I left in December, and I know she was coming up. She was going to again. Her mood was a bit more.
Sustained.
Did it change at all by the time December rolled around of '88?
It seemed a bit positive, maybe more hopeful.
Did you did you have the opportunity to observe Mrs. Broderick make preparations for visits with her children, boys?
Oh, certainly.
Okay, and what type of things would she do?
She would stock up the pantry, the fridge. She would buy hundreds of dollars worth of groceries. She would plan events for them. She would take care of any type of needs that would come up. She would organize, for example, visits to SeaWorld, check movies, events like this. She would attend to all of their needs and try to make it an interesting weekend or visit.
Now, how would you describe her general mood? This is from most of the time you were there.
Her general mood. Well, it was not constant. It fluctuated from periods of anxiety when it was court-related, when something was happening in that sense, but her mood would swing up when the boys, in anticipation of the boys coming or when they were there.
Now, you indicated that sometimes she was depressed. Was there anything that you would observe about what she would do? Did you want to be around people, not be around people when she was in that mood?
Well, Betty spent a lot of time in her room. I know that she would read books, magazines, and she would spend a lot of time alone. Could you ask that again? Could you ask me that again, please?
Did well, let me go to another question. Would her mood generally be different when she knew that the boys were going to be there?
Oh, certainly.
Well, sustained, but the action can stand.
Did was it tend to be better or worse than her general mood?
Sustained.
Would she always know when the boys were going to visit?
Objection calls for speculation.
Well, sustained.
Yeah. You were living in the house, weren't you?
Yes.
Okay. And so, would you be present when plans were made for when the boys were going to be there or not?
Yes.
Okay. And when those, did she always know when the boys were going to visit?
No.
Were there times when she would find out would there be times when you would be aware that the boys were coming for a visit?
Yes, I would be aware of that.
Okay. Would sometimes those plans change at the last minute?
Certainly.
Overruled. See if she has any personal knowledge of this. Go ahead. Do you know if it changed at the last minute?
Certainly, they did. Being there, I was able to listen to phone conversations. I took messages. I passed these on to Betty. She would tell me her change. You couldn't deny that there was something going on. Sometimes it would be a last moment notice that the boys were coming. Sometimes it would be a last moment notice that the boys were not coming. There were occasions where, after having made plans, that the fridge would remain full, and we would even have to throw things out.
And when the boys wouldn't come, how would that affect Betty emotionally?
Well, it would make her very depressed. She would be angry at Dan and depressed.
Did you ever know when living with Mrs. Broderick to cancel plans that she had at the last minute if she was to learn the boys were coming?
Okay, as far as specific plans, I would have to say I was uncertain of specific plans, but I do know that she would have to be very cautious about making plans in the event that she would not be there if the chance came for her to have the boys.
Okay. Was there any time where you saw her cancel a trip or going somewhere with somebody at the last minute?
Sustained.
You knew Brad Wright, is that correct?
True.
Was there any time she canceled something with Brad Wright at the last minute?
I cannot say the specific place they were going to go to, but I do recall that they could not confirm plans. I recall that they were talking about it in my presence, wanting to go away, but Betty's hesitation stopped them from going in the event that the boys could come for that weekend.
Were you present when the boys would go home?
Oh, sure, yes.
Okay. And what would, when it was time approaching to go home, what would the attitudes of them and their mother be?
Well, it would change. You could feel the air becoming more depressed and quiet. All of a sudden they would just become so sullen and quiet. Even though they would say, "Mommy, can't we stay? We wish we could stay." As soon as Dan came to the house, they knew that there was nothing. It's as though they realized there was nothing they could do. They just all of a sudden they became like little. I believe last time I used the term little soldiers, and I'll repeat that. They just did what they were supposed to do.
Okay.
Objection calls for speculation. She doesn't know what was
Would
in the
you
boy's
hear
head.
sometimes the answer phone messages left by the boys?
Yes.
And what kind of things would you hear on the message machine to Betty from her children?
Sustained at this point.
Okay. Were there messages that you would hear that that would be left on the answering machine and that the defendant would get, that Elizabeth Broderick again?
Would I hear the message? I would hear Rhett talking, making the message. I would be right there, the phone rang, and I would be listening to him being the message on the machine.
Okay.
It wouldn't,
And what kind of message? What?
Well, why don't you ask her if the defendant got the message, Mr. Early, and then go on.
Would this be a message that Elizabeth Broderick got?
oh, certainly. And she asked me to listen to the messages and relay them to her. This was one of the things that I did for her.
Okay. And what was the? What could you describe the message?
There was one in particular. Rhett was just pleading on the phone, Mommy, Mommy, where are you? Where are you? Please pick up the phone. I'm alone. Can I come over? And it was very sad to see him. It wasn't just as brief as that. It went on and on. He was very sad. He didn't want to be there alone, and he wanted his mother.
Did you hear? Did you ever hear Betty use profanity? Okay. Was that? Was that something that she was using 100% of the time, often, not often?
No. Seldom, if ever, and provoked. Well, it was because she was provoked.
Did she ever use profanity around the boys?
Only, I will say seldom, if ever again, when she was provoked. If the topic of the conversation was the divorce or Dan.
Okay. Others, as you say, seldom, was the rest of the time, did she seem to be appropriate around the children?
Oh, certainly, yes.
Okay. Did Betty socialize a lot?
Well, I was not part of her social circle, so all that I could tell you would be what I saw around the home, really.
Okay. Did she ever, at the time there, did she ever have a party?
She had one party, yes.
Okay, and what?
I was in the living room alone. Her house, thousands of people, beautifully mowed, and I was walking through not that immediate area, but area to it, and then I walked into the living room, and Betty's sitting there in the dark, alone.
Okay. Did you move back? Okay.
Right now, yeah.
Did you move back to Canada sometime in 1988?
I moved there about 5 years before Christmas in 1988, yeah.
I have no further questions, John.
Cross-examine.
Good morning, Miss. It's Paradin?
Yes.
Paradin. You lived with Elizabeth Broderick from August of 1988 to December of 1988, is that correct?
From the beginning of August to just about the end of December, correct.
So we're talking about a 4-month period of time late.
5 September. December.
And you left right before Christmas, correct?
Correct.
And you said at that time when you left right before Christmas that Elizabeth Broderick seemed fairly up and more positive than usual.
I didn't say that exactly. I said she appeared more optimistic, but it was in regard, I believe, we were discussing the trial at that time.
And it seemed that she appeared more positive, and this was right before Christmas and right before the trial, correct?
I would say yes.
You also stated that the boys, during the period of time that you were there, the boys were with her as often as they were not, correct?
I said that before, first time I came up for the question.
Right, yeah. During the time that you've already indicated that during the time that you lived there, that the kids were probably there as often as they weren't, correct?
Yes, I believe that would be.
So they were there on a fairly regular basis during that period of time?
They went to school all week. She did not have them during the week. I'm referring to weekends. They were there. She probably had them every other week. So referring to weekends only, she had them as often as she didn't have them.
And were you aware that there was an agreed upon, an informal agreed upon arrangement for her to have the children every other week? And that was consistent with what you're testifying that she had?
At the time, I was not aware that there was any agreement. This, I believe, this is one of the reasons that Betty was going to court was to get the child custody finalized.
Right. She did after January of 1989, but before that, you indicated she was having them on a fair basis every other week.
But it wasn't anything absolutely regular. It only happened to end up that way.
Right. When you lived with her there, was Maria Montez still living with her?
No, Maria was not living there.
You indicated that you applied to live there in order to exchange light housekeeping duties. Is that correct?
That was what I had mentioned in the advertisement, yes.
Did you exchange light housekeeping duties? Did you do some light housekeeping duties there for her?
I acted on my own initiative. I washed dishes after our meals primarily. I did no more than that. When I found that there was something I could do to be helpful to Betty, then I helped her just out of a sense of wanting to help her. Nothing was absolutely definitive what I had to do.
And you previously indicated that when you lived there at her home in Calle de Cielo, that it was a beautiful home. But she had, correct?
I was saying it quite.
During the entire time that you were there, the 4 to 5 months that you were there were only 2 instances in which she went to court, correct?
I recall 2 instances that she went to court. There could have been, I'm not certain, but there are 2 that I recall that she went to court.
Do you recall being asked that specific question before? How many times did she go to court during the period of time that you were there?
I recall being asked that, and I recall saying that there were 2 times, 2 instances that I recall that she went.
And during that period of time, also, you don't recall her receiving any legal documents during that period of time, correct?
Well, she had documents in her possession. Obviously, she must have received them somehow.
But I'm asking about during the time that you were there, for the 4 or 5 months you were there, you never recalled her receiving any documents during that period of time, correct?
Sure, she had new documents. Is this what you're implying, whether new documents came into her possession during that period that I was there?
Yes, I recognize you said that she had old documents there.
I didn't say whether they were old or new. No one has asked me this question yet.
Okay, were you asked before whether you were ever around when she received papers from the court? And your answer was that you were not aware of that.
I was not aware of how she received the paper. I remember being asked if the papers came in the mail. And that was what I was saying I was unaware of, the process of how she actually got them. But she did have papers. She was getting new papers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you there when she actually received the papers?
I would see Betty sitting there reading through new papers, and she would share with me the latest, the latest court thing going on.
For example?
For example, they were going to be going in again for more child custody. She would tell me that, let me try to recall.
Did you see a particular paper that had to do with that? Did you search on it?
I can't tell you numbers of documents or anything, no, but I recall seeing Betty sitting them, and she would tell me the gist of what they were about.
She told you, didn't she, that when she went to court on those 2 instances that she was frustrated because her attorney backed out each time she showed up at court?
I believe she was frustrated before she went to court because, as far as I understand it, the attorneys backed out before she went to court, as in the day before or the night before she went to court. All of a sudden, she was without representation.
And that's what she was indicating to you was occurring in 1988, that before she went to these 2 court appearances, that her attorneys backed out on her the day before or the morning?
This is my understanding that this is what happened.
Were you
Yes.
aware at the time that she was voluntarily not represented by an attorney at that time?
But am I unaware that she was not represented by an
Yes,
attorney?
that she had fired her last attorney months and months before, and that she was representing herself during that period.
Well,
of
but
time.
if she had fired one, obviously she must have had one.
No, she was representing her, well, it was your understanding that she had an attorney then in
Correct.
December of
Yes.
1988. You were not aware of the fact that she did not have an attorney, that she was representing herself at that time?
What time in '88, though?
During the time that you were there, during August through December of 1988.
Okay, December '88, I know she was talking to an attorney. As a matter of fact, she was talking to an attorney the afternoon that I was leaving. I didn't even get to give her a hug goodbye or anything. She was on the phone, and I knew it was an important phone call. I assumed she was discussing her upcoming trial with this attorney. Perhaps I also assumed that because she was talking to an attorney, that this attorney might represent her.
Okay. So it was your assumption on, at that time that she was representing?
For that particular instance, but accounting for her disappointment in that all of a sudden she has no attorney, that would lead me to assume that she had an attorney until they, for whatever reason,
Well, let me ask you
dropped.
then, when she went to court, you said you recall her going to court on 2 instances.
Correct.
And that when she came back, she was upset because she told you that her attorney backed out on her.
No, not when she came back from the court, before she went to the court.
Before she
went to the court.
She said that the attorney had called that morning or the night before and backed out on her?
This is what I understand happened, yes.
Legal papers in the house.
Correct.
Were you aware of, did you look at any of those papers? Were those papers that came from 1985, 1986,
No,
1987, 1988?
It was not my business to look through there. If there was something Betty asked me maybe to put away for her, I would put it in the appropriate box in the appropriate alphabetical order. But as far as me actually leafing through it, it was not my, I did not do that. It was not my.
So you don't know even whether these papers were copies that she made herself of documents or what sorts of documents they were, or whether they were after a period of years and she just kept them all there, correct?
I do not know. Well, I don't know whether they were copies, and I don't know the dates. Correct.
And she did appear anyway to keep things for long periods of time. She kept every letter, every piece of paper that she'd had from 1985, from 1986, from 1987, from 1988.
Yeah, she kept, I think, a pretty thorough record of her legal papers, so I would assume anyone would.
And she had a complete filing system that she had there. She showed you where she had documents of all of the newspaper articles regarding Dan and Linda, correct?
Well, if you can call boxes a filing system, these were boxes, and she had manila folders, and things would be labeled, and boxes would have names on them.
And did she have a folder that had to do with all the newspaper articles that dealt with Dan and Linda?
I don't recall seeing a particular folder about that, but I do recall seeing clippings. I do recall seeing clippings, newspaper clippings, that did have to do with Dan and Linda, yes.
And you have indicated that you felt that to Elizabeth Broderick, her social status was very important to her.
Yes.
And you've also indicated that during the time that you lived there with her, she was very active. She was involved in numerous activities at the time, correct?
I don't recall saying that she was very, very active.
Do you recall saying that she needed help when you came to work for her because she belonged to various...
I don't recall saying that. It's documented that I could look at that, so I would see.
If I can look for it, see if I can find it. You recall saying she needed various help around the house and some babysitting, as she belonged to various charities and social groups.
Okay, well, that's not quite what you just...
If you take a look at report page 2 dated
Appears to be undated by investigator Peter Bunn.
Oh, so this is not something I said in court. This was something that I was asked in a telephone conversation?
Excuse me, by an investigator, yes.
Okay, well, I wanted to clarify that because I don't remember saying this.
Okay, if you just take a look at, read that yourself to see if it's your recollection.
True, that is the indication that I got from Betty. That would relate more to our telephone conversations before I even met Betty.
And that was that she was looking for someone to provide her with some more help around the house and some babysitting because she was so involved in various social groups and charities, correct?
I would have to say that's correct.
During the time that you were living there, was she dating Brad Wright, to your knowledge?
I know friends who call it companions. As far as dating, getting dressed up, going out in each other's company, I would think once or twice that I can recall them actually going out as a couple, but they spent a lot of time in each other's company around the home.
And you indicated that you were aware of at least some trips that they were planning to take together, is that correct?
There were times at weekends where they had discussed possibly going away, but as far as absolute like destinations of places, events, I'm not familiar with that. I couldn't.
At this party that she had, was Brad right there?
I don't remember seeing Brad.
How many people were at the party?
I would say that there were at least 24. I would say dozens of people, just by looking at the heads, and maybe just, if I could roughly count the heads from here. The kitchen was full, there were people on the balcony.
Was this a party that you were invited to?
Betty told me that I could come. I was dressed up, I was looking forward to meeting some people. But when I approached the kitchen to enter, I didn't recognize anyone. I didn't recognize Betty, and I didn't want to enter alone. So I walked around the house to see if I could see Betty, and this is when I came upon her in the living room, sitting there alone.
And did you have a conversation with her at the time?
Yes.
What did she say?
I asked her what she was doing there. How come she wasn't with her friends? And she basically didn't like it.
You indicated that you never, or seldom if ever, she used profanity in front of you when she talked about Dan or Linda?
No, I said seldom in front of the children.
Okay, so she used it often with you?
No. No more than normal. I mean, how can you, I would say seldom if ever, again, would be a safe way for me.
Seldom if ever used profanity around you when she talked about Dan and Linda?
Yes,
It was clear to you that she hated Dan and Linda?
certainly.
And so that was clear to you from the language that she used and the tone of language that she used and the things that she said?
From the language she used, the tone, the things she said. Okay, that's acceptable.
And it was clear to you that her hate for Dan and Linda was shared with the children when they were over there?
I mean, that's
You have
acceptable.
to, so can you say that?
She talked about her hate for Dan and Linda in front of the boys as well, didn't she?
Everyone talked about their hate for Dan and Linda. I mean, the boys spoke of it, Betty spoke of it. It wasn't something that they constantly spoke about.
She even talked about wanting to kill him or wanting him to be dead in front of the boys, didn't she?
Everyone in that family mentioned that at
Miss
some point.
Broderick, could you answer that question? Did Elizabeth Broderick talk about wanting him to be dead during that period of time in front of the boys?
Yes, she said it, but I would like to clarify that. And then she would follow with, could you please pass the chicken? Or it was something said so casually. It was not.
All indicating you felt that even you felt uncomfortable about that even you got involved in conversation with their father to die.
No, I didn't feel uncomfortable about that. Or
Why would
Were you, you were not aware of the,
seriously, why would anybody She just moved in. She needed a place to stay. She was not friends with this woman. Why would she be like, oh, it's okay that she says to her kids, I want your dad dead? Who in their right mind would be like, oh, I was okay with that? Oh my God.
The situation that led up to how the boys got into Dan Broderick's custody in the first place, correct? She didn't describe that for you.
Well, whether I heard part of it through Betty's conversations with me, whether I have now part of it, whether part of my awareness through the newspapers or whatever, that is now a little bit confused. I cannot say specifically how I came about that information, but it would be safe to assume that Betty told me about that.
You were aware that at the time of the separation, that the children were originally with Dan Broderick.
No, I'm not aware of that.
Excuse me, that the children were originally with Elizabeth Broderick.
Okay, that, yes.
And there came a point when she took the children over to Dan Broderick's
I
house.
have an objection as irrelevant.
Sustained.
Well,
Beyond scope.
were you ever around, you were there in 1988, were you ever aware of any statements that she had made to 1984, 1986, 1987 about being embarrassed or being angry?
It's not beyond overruled chance that. Is she ever making any statements to that
Were
effect?
you aware of any statements that she made to that effect?
Your Honor, it calls for hearsay, and it's irrelevant as to whether she was aware of it or not.
May I
No,
proceed?
no, it's proper. Go ahead.
Could you ask me again? Could you
Were you aware of any statements that she had made in 1985, 1986, 1987 about being too embarrassed to talk to them because they lived with their father, about wanting to do violent things to Dan or Linda, about calling them wimps if they wouldn't run away from their dad, about getting angry at them if they said that they left their dad or they had
Your Honor,
Sustained. You phrased the question wrong this time, Ms. Wells.
I would answer no.
Okay.
Your Honor, I would like the impeachment that the district attorney asked for.
If I could approach sidebar, I'd like
Just a minute, let's take the morning recess. It's time for the morning recess. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be in recess until 5 minutes after the 11. Please remember the admonition not to discuss the case among yourselves. Don't let anyone else discuss it with you. Don't form any opinions until it's finally submitted to you. See you at 5 after 11.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just very briefly. You indicated, Mrs. Perrin, that there was a period of time when Lee was actually living there in the house with Mrs. Broderick. Okay, and for how long a period of time is that?
I would say for at least 2 months, the last 2 months while I was there.
So she was still living there when you left in December of 1988?
Yes,
And it was obvious to you that the boys loved their mother.
sure,
And obviously they wanted to have her love and attention in return.
certainly.
And obviously they wouldn't want to do anything that would put, where she would withdraw that love from them. Is that fair to say?
Fair to say.
And it's also true that you never saw the boys interact with their father outside the presence of the defendants. You were never...
True.
Your direct? No. Witness be excused. Thank you very much, ma'am. Free to leave. Times like this, I wish someone was the judge, because while we recess, the next is we're going to have to make some legal rulings before we get to the next witness. We're going to have to take matters up out of your presence. So after that recess, I'm going to excuse you early for lunch. I'm not sure how long this matter is going to take, so I will give you a little longer for lunch. We won't resume until about 2 o'clock this afternoon. I tell you that so that if you want to return to your place of business or residence, you'd have time to do that. Had I known before we took the recess that the further questions are going to be so brief, I wouldn't have bothered taking the recess, but I'm not a mind reader. I apologize to you for the inconvenience. It is necessary that we take up a matter outside your presence. We'll be in recess for the lunch hour until 2 o'clock this afternoon. Please remember the admonition. We'll see you at 2 o'clock. Matter of the people of the state of California versus Broderick. Court finds all members of the jury panel are present, all counsel are present, Mrs. Broderick is present. I apologize profusely, ladies and gentlemen, for keeping you down there. This is taking longer than I expected. It is probably going to take a little while longer to where it wouldn't be beneficial to keep you here the rest of the afternoon, because I don't think there'd be enough time for you to hear enough testimony to make it worthwhile having you stick around. For that reason, recess as far as you're concerned for the remainder of the day. And I'd ask you to remember the admonition, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And I apologize very sincerely for inconveniencing you today the way you've been inconvenienced, and I'm sorry. We'll recess.
Please state your full name for the record and spell your last name.
Anthony C. Joseph, Joseph.
Sir, what is your occupation?
I'm a judge of the Superior Court.
In 1987, were you hearing the matter of Broderick versus Broderick, a divorce dissolution matter?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And when you were first assigned the case, were you able to review the whole court file?
I believe so. The entire court file was there, but if not, I think virtually all of the file was there at the first review.
Do you remember testifying at the last trial that that you were not able to review it and that you would search for the file?
Yes, I do. If you want a narrative, I'll excuse. If not, glad to answer your time.
Was there something that's happened that's reached your memory?
Partially reading transcript last hearing and at the last trial.
Okay. So you were able to see that at the first hearing that you had the whole court file. Is that correct? Or pretty much all?
Mr. Early, I think I had most of the court file prior to the first hearing that was held. I can't tell you whether I had all of it. I don't know.
At some point in time, now after you received the case, did the court file remain in your, at least in your department?
It should have, but I don't know whether it did or not.
Okay. So it would have been in your department, at least at that, not OpenFlick, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. At some point in time, did the file become lost?
Some portion of the file definitely became lost.
Okay. You're aware that the file ended up being 8 volumes.
Stan, just rephrase it.
Were you aware that eventually the size of the court file?
No.
Okay. I mean, at some point in time,
And we were doing so good, too. Come on, StreamYard. You're going to have to stop in a few minutes anyway. I wanted to get through this, but we're not going to have time.
you always have the allegations of restraining orders.
Yes.
So the, those parts of the file, to your memory, were always, you've always had?
Upon the filing of a motion re contempt, it was the practice of Mr. Broderick's attorney to attach to each motion the prior orders, so that as the filing came in, you had the background in regard to the contempt, and the file that was ongoing, the piece that we had, contained much of that material. Not all.
Okay. So as when the file became law, it became through course of the legend reconstructed because it was contained some back orders.
Partially reconstructed.
Did you at some point in time make a search for the file that was missing? Yes. Locate that file?
No.
yourself? And send memos to the presiding judge about that?
I don't recall.
I have no further questions.
Cross down.
Good morning, Judge Joseph.
Good morning.
When you were originally assigned to the case of Broderick versus Broderick, were you assigned to it for all purposes?
Yes.
And then is it correct to say that one of the first duties that you had was in relation to a contempt hearing?
I believe so.
And then you presided over a series of 4 contempt hearings, is that correct? And your recollection is that when you were first assigned to the case, that at least your feeling was that you had the entire file, or what appeared to be the entire file?
I had what appeared to be the entire file. I spent a considerable through the file, I believe, before the first hearing. And at that time, I thought I had the full file.
Now, when someone files a...
I don't understand. I don't understand why we're talking so much about the divorce and missing files and whatever and contempt orders, and none of that gives her the right to kill Dan and Linda. None of it. So why are we talking about it? That is not a justification for murder. It makes no sense to me why we're talking about it. It happens every day. People get divorced and people suck it up and go on with their lives. They don't kill their spouse or former spouse or whatever. I just don't understand why they're admitting all this evidence of a divorce. She is an entitled biatch that got pissed at her ex-husband because he cheated on her, and then she felt like he wasn't giving her enough spousal support. That's what all this boils down to. Talking to judges and lawyers and whoever that handled her divorce case is not going to absolve this woman of murder. I don't get it. Does anybody else get it? I'm serious. Does anybody else understand why the defense are putting these people on the stand? How is being divorced a justification for murder?
Contempt action, obviously they have to file pleadings that go along with that, is that correct?
Yes.
And that's where they file documents where they're making the allegations of what they are alleging the contempt to be, and where they also file the supporting documents that refer to, for example, the restraining order, the existence of the restraining order, and the fact that it had been served on the defendant, etc. Is that?
In general, the document that leads to a contempt hearing is a form. There's substantial blanks to be done. But and then the attachments up to the file if they choose.
One of those documents are filed with the court, and a date for the contempt hearing is an actual hearing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And when you make a decision on whether or not someone here, you have an evidentiary hearing. Is that correct? And that means that witnesses testify.
Sometimes.
And in this particular case, in each of the contempt hearings, is it not true
Your
that
Honor,
Elizabeth...
objection, this is beyond the scope of the direct.
Sustained.
Okay. Now, when you were originally assigned the case, you were located physically in this courtroom, is that correct?
In this courthouse.
Not
yes.
courtroom, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it was actually 2 floors below this courtroom, if I understand where I am.
Sometimes we all get lost getting here. But you were in this courthouse, downtown San Diego courthouse.
That's
Now,
correct.
sometime in between the first contempt hearing and your ultimate last contempt hearing, the case got transferred up to Vista, is that correct?
That's correct.
And also there's some years in between there where you were at the Claremont courthouse?
Yes, the juvenile courthouse, which is close to it.
Okay, so there were some hearings downtown, then there was some hearings in that courthouse, then there was some hearings up in the Vista courthouse.
I think there was one hearing at the juvenile court, that's my memory.
Okay, and so obviously when you are going to other courthouses, those documents or the files have to be transferred along with you, is that correct?
Well, that's what we hope and expect, but I'm not sure that's what happened.
Is it not true that it is common, or not necessarily uncommon, for files to get misplaced, files to get lost, or portions of files to get lost?
It does happen.
And in fact, it often happens that documents that should go into one file end up being in another file.
That also happens.
Marty answered my
Who
question.
is actually, do you know who is actually even responsible for transferring a file? If you get transferred up to Vista, who makes sure that the file gets up to Vista, or how they do it?
I don't think I could give you the names of the individuals who are responsible. My court clerk in whichever department I'm sitting in takes the responsibility to bring whatever files are necessary from other courthouses and get them to my courtroom for the hearings that are coming up. And
In between a hearing, for example, if you have a hearing in 1987 on a contempt, and then there's not another hearing that's filed until 1988, that court file doesn't stay in your courtroom, does it? It goes back to the court records.
that's usually correct.
Okay. So there's also a transfer of documents from the courtroom to court records, and then if there's going to be another hearing, someone from court records has to give the documents back to the courtroom wherever it may be.
That's right.
Okay. And if there is a file, as counsel indicated, there were more than one volume of this particular file, is that
Yes.
correct? And there's no set rule on when you start a new file, like if it gets to be 50 pages, then you start to file number 2.
There's no set rule that I'm aware of. There may well be one within our administrative structure, but I don't know how it works.
Okay.
When the files begin to overflow, they start volume 2.
Okay. And do you know if there's any procedure, any set procedure of how they necessarily keep all those volumes together?
I'm not familiar with that.
Were you familiar at all with when portions of the file were discovered at one point, whether or not there was any difference between that file and the file that you originally had when you started on it?
I don't think I can answer that question because in thinking back, I don't recall that I ever had a reconstructed file when the file went to another judge.
Okay. Obviously, there came a point then after you had dealt with some of the contempt hearings where the case got transferred to another judge.
Yes.
Okay. And that was transferred again to even another courtroom, the family law court building, is that correct?
I believe so. I'm not sure.
When you were assigned to the case originally, is it not true that was because a prior judge, Judge Murphy, had been challenged?
He either had been challenged or he chose to remove himself from the file. And again, I'm not clear. I don't recall what happened.
Okay. When you had the contempt hearings, well, let me just ask you this question. Were you ever a close personal friend of Dan Broderick's?
Never.
When the contempt hearings began, did you ever tell Elizabeth Broderick that you were a close personal friend of Dan Broderick's and she had no choice but to appear before you?
I did not.
Can you tell me, Judge Joseph, how long you've been a judge?
I was appointed in October 1979. I think 11 years.
I was trying to do that out myself.
I believe I'm in my 12th year now, but
And have you been a family law judge that entire time?
no.
Can you tell us what portion of that time you were a family law judge?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this. It's irrelevant.
Well, sustain.
How long had you been a family law judge when you became involved in the case of Broderick versus Broderick?
Your Honor, object is irrelevant.
Overruled, you can answer that.
1987. I think I had been a family law judge in part or total assignment all but 2 years prior to that time.
Your Honor, may I approach the sidebar just to ask a clarification before I go any further?
Sure.
Just one more question at this point. Judge, if you can answer the question, do you recall writing a letter with respect to something about thinking that maybe the file got lost in Judge Murphy's time warp?
I think so.
Do you know what that meant or what you were referring to?
Judge Murphy, I believe, on more than one occasion had attempted to settle either all or part of this case. And I think my assumption was that part of the file may have stayed in his chambers. I didn't know. And
Oh, don't start.
in general, Tom Murphy works in a somewhat different way than some of the rest of our judges. He's an excellent judge in any respect. It's possible that a part of it could have been missed, and I was suggesting one place that they might search.
Judge Joseph, you knew of Dan Broderick before he came into your courtroom, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and you knew what his position in R was, didn't you?
Of course.
I thought it was generally it is.
You want this proper direct, you want to do this on cross.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
The that he walked into the room, was there a statement made about, "Good morning, Mr. Broderick, what do we owe the honor of your presence here"?
Well, I don't think it ever would have been good morning, because I don't recall that he was ever in my courtroom in the morning. He may have been. I've read about this statement in the press for a long period of time now, and I have searched my memory to try to be definitive. I do not remember making any such statement, but it's been repeated so many times that maybe I should say at this point, I'm not positive.
I don't
think
did.
I made that statement.
I don't think you did.
That's not an unusual statement for you to make when someone walks
I don't
into the
think you
courtroom
did.
who you know,
I
is
think
it?
she made that up.
The statement that has been reported in the press, I think, is an unusual statement for me to make. And that's one of the reasons I'm telling you I don't think I made
I
that
don't think you
statement.
did either.
So it would be unusual for you to greet somebody such as Mr. Broderick when he walked into the courtroom in a respectful manner?
Didn't I say that he would have had the case in front of him and he wouldn't have said, "Well, hello, Mr. Broderick, to what do we owe the honor?" Because he would have known he was fixing to do his court case. That is a ridiculous statement. I think she made it up. I don't think he ever said that.
Mr. Early, generally I'm not in the courtroom when people come in. I'm in chambers and we begin the proceeding. If I see lawyers who I'm acquainted with in the courtroom or elsewhere, I'll greet them.
A lot of times in this courthouse, when cases are transferred from one place to another, the file is given to an attorney to go into court. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So there's times that you're on the bench where an attorney will walk in with the file. Is that right? Do you remember whether that happened in this case or not?
No memory of that.
And the first time you heard that statement, that was in the newspaper? Or did you hear that from Elizabeth Broderick?
I believe it was on the media, and I think in the newspaper.
That was after the homicide and death of Mr. Broderick?
Yes, it was.
You have no memory of hearing that beforehand, Elizabeth Broderick bringing that up to you? If you don't, that's fine.
I don't at times, Mr. Early.
Okay. Now, when the case went to you for a contempt hearing
That's possible.
in 1987
It's possible.
in February, is that correct?
She is delusional.
I'm not certain if it was February.
I'm sorry. The first hearing would have been in April 2nd. Just transfer.
I believe this is beyond.
This is just to the file, Your Honor.
You're just asking about the file?
About the file, that's all.
All right.
I believe the first hearing was April 2nd, 1987. That's my belief.
Now, when you read the court file on April 2nd, did you notice anything unusual about the file? Do you recall anything?
I don't recall that, and I probably read the court file in advance of April 2nd. I don't know what day of the week that was, but I often would read a court file, particularly one that I knew was complex, the night before or a few days before.
Sir, just to help you refresh your recollection, I'm referring to a transcript of April 2nd, 1987, Your Honor, page 7. If you could just read the bottom, which would be...
Do you want me to read it out
to
loud?
yourself.
Yes.
Okay. That considerable time reading the court file.
Mr. Early, that's part of the material that I referred to at the very beginning of my testimony that did refresh my recollection about the fact that I believe I had either the whole file or most of the file at that point in time.
Okay, and you don't remember anything unusual about the file?
No, I don't. Not at that point.
Now, Judge, from that 88, and we're talking about May 4th, 1988, assuming that this is the last contempt hearing that you heard.
All right.
Okay. That file would have stayed with you, is that correct? And Your Honor, I'm sorry, I was referring to People's 85B.
All right.
Okay.
That file was a file that was assigned to me for all purposes. I went to the juvenile court for a brief period of time. My belief is that at those hearings, I had the file. When the first hearing in Vista was held, my memory is that I did not have the full file. Somewhere between juvenile court, back downtown, and out to Vista, I don't know what happened to the file.
Okay. And you had mentioned that this file, at least at the beginning, was a file that was kept in your chambers because it was a sealed file?
No, I don't think so.
This was kept in the regular course of business?
Yes, there are cabinets in our clerk's office for sealed files, and part of this is just assumption, but I believe that the file would have gone back to the clerk's office and been retained in a sealed file cabinet.
Okay. And
Hurry up, Arlie. We got places to be. Okay, we're gonna stop there. Early, you're taking too long. Okay, this is the judge. What's his face? I don't remember his name. True today. Now we're going to Iowa. Okay, so now we're going to Iowa to Katrina Cooper's sentencing. This should redirect. I say should redirect. So I will see you guys over there, and then we will be done for the week. So I will see you guys over there in a few minutes. It should redirect. I hope it will redirect. If not, I hope you find me. If not, I will see you guys on Monday. Bye.